Welcome to the introductory lecture for Philosophy 10, Intro to Logic, UC San Diego. This video is for anyone really, but mainly the students who are taking Phil 10. There will be other videos that I put up that discuss the content of the course, and anyone who wants to learn logic can look at those. This is not really about the content of the course. This is about how the course is going to be run, grading policy, things like that. So if you're not actually enrolled in the course, this probably won't be very useful for you. If you are enrolled in the course, this is the material that I discuss on the first day. So if you miss the first day, you can watch this video. Also, I should point out that I'm making this video in September of 2016. This will probably be online for a while. What you'll want to do is, in addition to watching this video, check the syllabus for the quarter that you're actually enrolled, because there may be a few slight differences in grading policy or whatever. I do change the course from time to time. So anything in this video is largely going to be correct, but just double check on the syllabus to make sure that I haven't changed anything with the grading policy or that sort of thing. So what will I be talking about today? I'll be discussing administrative information, which includes who I am, the course materials, discussion sections, the Google group for the course, how grades will be done, and some other issues. Then I'll do a brief content introduction, and this will be basically what is logic, why is it important, then discussing the three things that we'll be talking about in the course specifically: sentential logic, informal fallacies, and cognitive biases. So first off, administrative information. Who am I? My name is Rick Grush. I'm professor of philosophy at UC San Diego. Who else is involved in this course? There are TAs who are involved in the course. They have they teach discussion sections. They have office hours. I also have office hours. The specifics of who the TAs are, what our office hours will be, that sort of thing, they change each quarter, and these will be announced on the Google group. We'll also put them on the online syllabus. So you should check there to get that information. The course materials for this class, the main material piece of course material is the textbook, which is Basic Sentential Logic, Informal Fallacies, and Cognitive Biases. This is was written by me, specifically for this course. It's published by the UCSD Custom Course Materials rather than a commercial publisher. And the reason for that is that books from commercial publishers are just incredibly expensive. And I wanted to make something available to the students that was far less expensive. So the Custom Course Materials department just runs these off and sells them very inexpensively. And it's also written explicitly for this course, so it's better than a commercial text in a number of ways. Specifically, it's designed exactly for how this course is run. And then there's a couple of ways that comes out. First off, there's no material in the text that's extra. There's nothing that isn't there, except for the optional material. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But pretty much everything you need to do to get an A in this class is there, all of the material. Also, there are practice exams. This should say practice quizzes and exams. There are 5 quizzes and a final exam in the course, and for each one of those, there's a practice version in the textbook, as well as solutions to those practice quizzes and exams. So you'll know exactly what the quizzes and final will look like before you take them. Also, there's a preliminary syllabus, the last 2 pages of the text. And I say preliminary because it's shorter, and I had to write that before certain things were known, like who the TAs were. You definitely need to check the official syllabus and read the official syllabus online. That's longer, it's got more information, and it's kept up to date. But for quick reference, there is a preliminary version in the text. Now to the online syllabus. That changes every quarter, obviously. You can find it by going to this website. This is my website, mind.ucsd.edu. Go to the teaching menu and then just scroll to the correct quarter. I'm making this recording September 2016, so for this quarter it would be fall 2016 entry. But in the future, obviously you would go to whatever class it is and make sure you go to the right one. Sometimes students find themselves reading the syllabus from the wrong quarter. So make sure you're going to the quarter corresponding to the one you're actually enrolled in. Notice that there will be questions on the syllabus. Questions concerning the syllabus content will be on some of the quizzes and maybe even on the final. So they're designed to be such that if you've read the syllabus, I want to say carefully, just, don't have to pore over every single word, but read it and, understand what's going on. And if you've read the syllabus and understand what's going on, the multiple choice question should be super easy. So just think of this kind of as like free points. These are some of the easiest points you're going to get in this class, is just by reading the syllabus. Why do I want you to read the syllabus? A couple of reasons. One, it makes my life and the TA's lives easier. One of the complaints that philosophy, or any faculty member has who teaches is student questions and emails concerning things that are already covered on the syllabus. Now, about this one, you can get these shirts, by the way, but as for this one, I don't always ignore your emails, but when I do, it's because the answer is in the syllabus. I won't actually ignore your emails. Even if you ask me a question that's on the syllabus, I'll still respond. I maybe won't be happy about it, the fact that you're asking a question that's on the syllabus, but I will respond. If I don't respond, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because sometimes things get busy. I intend to respond. I forget. If you send me an email and I don't respond within a day or so, just send it to me again. That's completely fine. I'm not purposefully blowing anybody off. It's just sometimes emails get lost in the shuffle. Another reason that I want people to read the syllabus is it just ensures that you will do as well as you can. I've actually had students do less well than they could simply because they didn't understand the grading policy completely well. There was actually a student once who failed a class because she didn't read the syllabus and instead just asked someone in class next to her about some key feature of the grading policy. And he just made something up that was false. I don't know where he got what he said. Anyway, as a result, she just had a completely erroneous idea about how the grading policy worked. And as a result, ended up failing the class because she just blew off certain things that she really couldn't have afforded to blow off. And she could have gotten a very good grade. So anyway, that's an extreme example. But in general, if you understand the syllabus and how the course works, you're immune to certain kinds of problems like that. So those are reasons why it's good for you to read the syllabus, even apart from the fact that it'll be some free points for you on some of the quizzes and the final. In addition to the textbook, there are lecture videos. In fact, this video that I'm recording and you're watching now is a video that will be online. There's a YouTube channel connected to this course. The name is Intro to Logic, Phil 10, UC San Diego. So you can search for that on YouTube. Also, there's just going to be a link from the online syllabus. You can just click on the link. It'll take you to the YouTube channel. There will also be links to specific videos too for different parts of the course. The purpose of these videos is just to give students an additional resource so that you have something to watch. In addition to the lectures, it's basically the same material I lecture on. At least as of fall 2016, these videos will probably be up for a while, and I do kind of tweak the material that I lecture on a little bit. So as the years proceed, there may be slight divergences between the physical lectures and what happens in these videos. But for the most part, they should be the same. In addition to all of that, there are discussion sections. Now, when you signed up for this course, you actually signed up for a specific discussion section. Attendance at the discussion sections is not required. However, I highly recommend it. It's a very good way to increase your mastery of the material. It's a very time-efficient way. You can get questions answered, you can practice things, but you don't have, if you don't want to, you don't have to attend. You can attend any section you want to, okay, not just the one you're enrolled in. So you can attend more than one section. If there's a section other than the one you're enrolled in that just fits your schedule better, that's fine. You can show up at that one. However, keep in mind that whatever section you're officially enrolled in, the TA for that section is the one who's going to be in charge of your grades. Okay, so you can attend any section you want, but if you have a question about, you think maybe a score for a quiz wasn't recorded correctly, or there's some issue about your scores or grades, that's the TA you should go to, is the TA for the section you're officially enrolled in. Okay, but you can attend any of the sections you like. You should memorize your section number. So when you sign up for this course, there's different sections, AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4. Just learn and memorize whichever one you are in, because up at the top of the quizzes and the final, there will be a place for you to write your section number, and that will help your quiz or final go to the correct TA, so that the correct TA can record the points you got. Okay? If your quiz or final doesn't go to the TA that's managing your grade sheet, then you're not going to get those points. Okay? So you want to actually make sure you know your section number so you can write it on the top of your quiz or exam. In addition, here's more free points for you. Once you memorize that, you're good, because there's some of the points you're going to get on the quizzes and the final are just like 5 points for filling out everything correctly, getting the right section number at the top, and so on. So basically, think of this as just more free points for you. Okay, next up, the Google group. There is a Google group for this course. This is the URL for the group fall 2016. Now that's going to change every quarter. So obviously, if you're watching this in a different quarter from fall 2016, don't go to this particular URL. Go to the online syllabus, and there will be a link to the current Google group. Okay, so that's how you should get to that. This group is used by the TAs and me to communicate to students about important things, like due dates, if the schedule changes, when scores are available online, stuff like that. There's not going to be a whole lot of posts to this group, maybe a couple a week-ish. So it's not going to be like a huge spam on your inbox. But the things that come out on that are important. They're usually information you want to have. And I want to emphasize this part down here. It is a course requirement that you subscribe to the group, or if you don't want to subscribe for whatever reason, you're paranoid and you think Google is spying on you or something, or there's a technical problem, you can't, whatever. If for some reason you don't subscribe, you should make sure you check that group very regularly. And by very regularly, I mean at least 2 or 3 times a week. Okay? How can you do that if you're not subscribed? Well, the group is public. If you subscribe, any post made to it will come straight to your inbox. If you're not subscribed, you can still go to the URL and just look at the posts online through your web browser and read everything. So if you're not subscribed, you should go and make sure that you're up to date. Why? Because, or what do I mean by course requirement? Students are responsible for any information that gets posted to that group. Okay, so for example, if there's a quiz scheduled for Wednesday, but for some reason I have to change it to Monday, on the previous Friday I might announce that on the Google group, and I'll say, hey, next week we were going to have a quiz Wednesday. That's what it says in the syllabus, but we have to change that. It's going to be Monday. Once I make that announcement on the group, everyone's responsible for that. So if you just don't get that announcement, don't read the page, and then don't show up for class Monday and think that the quiz is on Wednesday, that's on you. It's not on me. Okay? If you come back and say, oh, I thought it was on Monday, or I thought it was Wednesday, I'm going to say, hey, the announcement was made on the Google group. It's a course requirement that you get those announcements or that you are up on that information. So you just kind of missed that, and I'm sorry, but that's on you. So anyway, that's why you want to subscribe to the group, is to make sure you get that info. Okay, how are grades determined? There is 900 points available in the course, okay, broken down in the following way. There's a typo here already. There's going to be 5 quizzes. Okay, so there's 6 chapters in the textbook. After chapters 1 through 5, there will be an in-class quiz that will be 100 points. That should say 100 points for each quiz. So that totals 500 for the quizzes. Then at the end, there will be a final exam, which is cumulative, covering chapters 1 through 6. That will be 400 points. Okay. It'll be weighted towards chapter 6. There'll be more points on chapter 6 since 6 didn't have its own quiz. But if you add those up, that's 900 points. So there's 900 points in the class that you can get. Now, what are the letter grade cutoffs, you might think? Is there a curve, you might ask? Well, yes and no. So what does yes and no mean? There's 2 typical ways of doing letter grade cutoffs are either just having a straight letter grade cutoffs that are defined beforehand. Usually it's like 10%, 90 and above is an A, 80 to 90 is a B. And that's just known beforehand and it doesn't change no matter how the students do, right? That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is a curve where the cutoffs are depends on how the class does, right? So if everyone does really well, the grade cutoffs move up, right? So that even if you get 90%, if everyone else is getting 95%, you still might end up with a C, right? Even though you're getting 90%. Or it could curve down, right? Maybe you're only getting 50%, but the average is 40%, so you're getting a B, right? So, that's how a curve works. How is this class going to work? Well, it's sort of a combination of the two. There will be a curve, but it's going to be within pretty narrow limits, right? So for instance, exactly where the A cutoff is will be between 93% and 91.5% and above. Okay, so it's not going to be more than 93 and it's not going to be less than 91.5, but exactly where it is will kind of depend on the average score for the class. Okay, and you can sort of look down here. This is also on the syllabus, by the way, this breakdown. So it's curved a little bit, but it's going to be curved within these boundaries. Okay, so for instance, if you get 93%, you're going to get an A. Okay, it doesn't matter if your score is the lowest score in the class. Everybody else got 100% and you got 93, right? So you did worse than everybody else. You'll still get an A, right? Because it won't curve up higher than a 93. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. It'll curve, but only within the bounds that are specified here. Now, you might notice, let's go back to this slide, that the A plus has NA, not applicable. That's because you can't get an A plus this way. Even if you get 100%, you won't get an A plus. So A is 93 and above will give you an A. You might think, hey, that's no fair, I want an A plus. Well, this is where the second part of the grading policy comes in. What I just described is going to apply to 80% of the students in this class. Okay, so most students, what I just said, this is what applies to you. You can ignore the optional material I'm going to talk about. You can still get an A, and there's no grade point difference between an A and an A plus. They're both 4.0 grade points. So most students, this is what you need to deal with right here. Okay, now, in addition to that part of the grading policy that applies to 80% of the people in the class is what I'm going to talk about now. Each chapter will have some optional material, and that's material that is kind of the same as the regular material, but it's significantly more advanced. All right? There will be, on every quiz and on the final, some questions on the optional material. Okay? Any student who over the quarter gets between 75% and 89.9% on the optional material will have their letter grade bumped by 1/3 of a letter grade. So for instance, if you've got an A, you'll get bumped to an A plus. So that's how you can get an A plus. Any student who gets, there's a typo here, this should be 90 to 100%. will have their letter grade boosted by 2/3. Okay, so if you've got an A minus, that'll boost you to an A plus. Or if you've got a B plus, it'll boost you to an A. Now, here's the important thing. Don't think of this optional material and the optional questions as extra credit. It's not extra credit. So, if you take the quiz and you get, 90 out of 100 points on the quiz, but you also get the optional question right, that's not giving you more points on that quiz. You still just got 90 points on that quiz, even if you answered the optional question correct. Okay? So they're not extra points. They get your grade this way. You'll get the question right or wrong, and if overall you get 75 to 90% over the course of the quarter, that will boost your grade by 1/3. So they're not extra points. They're a way of triggering this grade bump at the end. Now here's the point that's super important, and I want to emphasize this. This material, the optional material, is more advanced topics than the stuff in the regular parts of the chapter. So if you're not already doing really well on the regular material, right? If you're not already getting like a B or a B plus at least, and you feel really comfortable with it, you should not worry about the optional material. Okay, just forget about it. For most students, the most efficient thing they can do to get a higher grade is to just master the regular stuff. That's what's going to get your grade better. Only if you've already mastered the regular stuff, it's pretty easy to you, you've got it down, you're doing well, then maybe think about doing the optional stuff. Okay? This material is really intended for people who are going to do advanced work in logic, math majors, computer science majors, philosophy majors, potentially anyone who's just interested, right? They start doing the logic and they think, wow, this is great, I'm getting it. It's really cool. I want to dig into some deeper material, even if you're not going to do more logic later. It's still okay. But I just want to emphasize that really there's only 10-20% of the students in the class that should be thinking about this. Okay, I'm going to talk more about this, and the TAs will talk more about this to everybody. Okay, other issues. Quiz length. The normal quizzes, this is the quizzes in class that happen after every chapter. They're designed to be taken in 15 to 20 minutes is about how long it should take you if you're kind of on top of the material. Okay, if you've really mastered it, 10 to 15 minutes. If you are just on top of it, you get it 15 to 20 minutes. Now we will stay longer than that. So you're fine if it takes you a little longer. But if it is taking you longer than 20 minutes, that should be a little bit of a warning to you that maybe you need to do more practice. The final exam, we have 3 hours scheduled for the final. Students finish that anywhere from 1 hour, if they're really, really on top of everything, to maybe 2.5 hours. Some students are there for the whole time. I really doubt they have to be. I think after 2.5 hours, anyone who's there is just double checking work or something like that. So there's plenty of time, generally speaking, for the final exam. Academic integrity. The issues there, I would just say, don't copy off anybody else during the quizzes or the final exam. And don't let people copy off of you, because that will also drag you into the academic integrity office. The people who go in for these hearings, when they happen, it's not just the person who's copying, it's the person who got copied off of. Okay, they have to head into. So just don't do it. Okay. All right. Action items. These are things you should be doing if you're enrolled in the class. 1, learn your section number. Okay, it's A01, it's A02, up to whatever, maybe A08, depending on the quarter. Okay, learn it, memorize it, so that you can write it on the top of your quizzes and final. You get points for doing that right. Second, read the syllabus, the online syllabus. Make sure you read the one for the correct quarter, whichever quarter you're enrolled in. Go to this URL to get to the syllabi and make sure you get on the right one. And again, free points. Okay, read it, understand the syllabus, and then there will be some multiple choice questions on some of the quizzes that will be easy for you to answer if you've read the syllabus. Third action item, join the Google group, subscribe to the all email option. When you sign up, there's a variety of options, all email or digest or no email, something like that. You want all email. So if it gives you the option when you sign up, click it. If you don't see that option when you sign up and then go to the settings and make sure that you're getting all email. Okay, and again, make sure you're signing up for the correct quarter. From time to time, there are students who subscribe to the Google group from a previous quarter, and obviously that's not going to help you. Okay, next up I want to talk a little bit about just what logic is, a general idea of what the course is about. So what is logic? Logic is essentially the study of reasoning. And what is reasoning? Reasoning is a process of going from some given facts or information or assumptions, and then moving from that to some new piece of information. Okay, and here's an example, or well, first to put it another way, it's determining what follows from what, or what doesn't follow from what. So here's an example that I really like. This is the pizza argument, that I'll call it. And this is real life. I was at LAX, this was quite a while ago, and in a gate, and I'm sitting next to this family. There's a wife and a husband and a little girl, little boy, about 10 years old. And the kids are hungry. So the dad is going to go to this Pizza Hut thing to get little individual pizzas for the kids. Asks them what they want, and the girl wants a cheese pizza, the boy wants pepperoni pizza. Dad leaves, comes back a couple minutes later, has two little individual pizza boxes, puts them down on the table. The girl takes one box, opens it up, it's pepperoni. She closes it, puts it back down on the table. She takes the other box, picks it up, doesn't look in it, doesn't open it, doesn't look in it, picks it up and takes it back to where she's sitting. Okay, now this is fascinating because she wants a cheese pizza, but she didn't look in the box. How does she know it's a cheese pizza without looking in the box? Well, this is how she knew. She had two pieces of information she started off with, right? There was some initial information that she knew, okay? First off, this one, either the pizza in my hand is a cheese pizza or it's pepperoni. Well, how did she know that? Well, she knew it because her dad said he was going to get a cheese and pepperoni. Her dad's pretty reliable about these things. So that's a pretty good assumption because that's where that piece of information came from. It's not pepperoni. How does she know it's not pepperoni? Well, because she looked in the other one, and the other one was the pepperoni pizza. Okay? So those are the pieces of information she had at that point in time. But she knew that from those two pieces of information, a new piece of information followed, right? The one that's currently in her hand is cheese. So she didn't have to look into it. She could get that information. Now, she could have looked, right? That would be another way you could get that piece of information, is open that box and look and see that it's a cheese pizza. Okay, but she didn't have to do that because she arrived at that information via another route, not by looking, but by reasoning. Okay, and so this was the piece of reasoning she went through. And in fact, this piece of information followed from these prior pieces of information. So that's an example of reasoning. Studying logic is kind of studying that sort of process. In this particular case, it was a good piece of reasoning, but sometimes it's bad, and we want to know what the differences are. Here's another example. Bob says, I don't know why your plants are dead. I watered them twice while you were gone. Alice replies, well, you couldn't have. If you'd watered them, then you'd have had to use the hose, but it was in the same exact position it was in when I left. So Alice, she wasn't there. She didn't see whether Bob watered the plants or not. Okay, but she could get that information. She could arrive at that piece of information via reasoning from some information that she had. Hose isn't moved. She could just look at the hose and see that it's in the same position. Her knowledge that the hose would have to be moved in order to water the plants, and so forth. Okay, so that's what logic is. It's studying reasoning, and those are some examples of reasoning. When it goes well, when it doesn't go well. Why is logic important? Well, reasoning governs pretty much everything you do, or not everything you do, but almost everything you do, quite a bit of it. And a lot of it's bad. A lot of decisions people make are bad decisions because they're based on bad reasoning. And even worse, not only is it bad, but there are people who know that it's bad, and they know exactly how it's bad, and they know how to manipulate the fact that reasoning is bad and manipulate it to their own ends. So advertising agencies, political campaigns. So to the extent that you are better at reasoning and you understand this process better, you will be more immune to these sorts of manipulation. Okay, so that's the overall topic, is reasoning and how it works, what makes it good when it's good, what makes it bad when it's bad. The course will talk about 3 different topics in reasoning. So the first 4 chapters, and this is the main focus of the course, is what we will call sentential logic. What does that mean? Well, in many cases, not all, we'll get to that later, but in many cases, what makes a piece of reasoning good or bad is the formal features of that reasoning. What is a formal feature? What does that mean? Well, here's an analogy. You've got a kid's face. You can take some rubber or polyurethane or something, whatever this blue stuff is, put it on their face, and you can get this thing here, a mask or a mold, which is the same shape as that kid's face. Okay, same shape, or you could think of it as the form of that kid's face. You could then fill that shape with different things, right? So you could fill it with the kid's face, right? You could just put the mask back on the kid, right? So you could fill it with biomass, but you could also fill it with plaster or bronze or whatever, right? So you could have different materials filling that same shape, right? And ending up in the same form. Okay, so that's an analogy, but you'll see that the analogy is pretty close. Okay, so let's go back to the pizza argument. Either the pizza in my hand is a cheese pizza or it's pepperoni. It's not pepperoni, therefore it must be cheese pizza. There's a form that argument has, and here's the form: either X or Y, not Y, therefore X. And you can think of this as sort of the shape of that argument. Now the material has been taken out. In this case, the material are the sentences corresponding to X and Y, and these are sentences about pizza. It's not a pepperoni pizza, it's a cheese pizza. Pizza in my hand is cheese, right? So those sentences are kind of the material. That's like the bronze or the plaster or the face, the real face, right? But this frame is kind of the shape of the piece of reasoning. And you can have different pieces of reasoning that have the same shape. So for example, either it will rain today or I will have to water the garden. It will not rain today, therefore I will have to water the garden. Okay, same form, either X or Y, not Y, therefore X. Okay, well actually this is not X, therefore Y, but it's the same form of argument. So why is it called sentential logic? Well, because it's the form, we're going to study the forms you get when you replace the sentences, content of sentences, with variables. So in this argument, the pizza argument, instead of the pizza in my hand is a cheese pizza, we're replacing that with X. And it is a pepperoni pizza, we're replacing that with Y. So we're looking at the form that you get when you replace the sentences with variables. Now there's more advanced courses in logic that look at the form you get when you look at not just sentences, but names and predicates and modals and things like that. So this is kind of the most basic version where we're looking at the form you get on the basis of sentences. Now, what are informal fallacies? So the first 4 chapters are sentential logic and formal features of logic. Chapter 5 will talk about informal fallacies. What are those? Well, these are common patterns of reasoning that are often bad for reasons other than formal reasons. Okay, so it's bad reasoning often, but the formal tools we will develop aren't really the right tools to understand why it's bad. So here's an example. Every time D'Angelo Williams carries more than 30 times, the Steelers win, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So all Tomlin, he's the head coach of the Steelers, has to do to keep the Steelers winning is to give the ball to Williams at least 30 times a game. This is actually a bad argument. This would not work. Now, it looks good, maybe, if you just look at it. And the problem isn't that the premises are false, right? It is true that when D'Angelo Williams carries 3 times a game, the Steelers win, right? So the problem isn't that the initial information is false, but the reasoning is bad. But we can't understand why the reasoning is bad using the formal tools we'll develop in 1 through 4. So we have to have some new tools to look at some of these cases. So those are informal fallacies. Final topic, and this is chapter 6, are cognitive biases. And what are these? These are psychological influences on belief formation that often lead to holding erroneous beliefs. They're not exactly fallacies because they're not. The problem isn't exactly a problem with reasoning. It's a problem with believing specific things that might show up in reasoning, but it's closely connected enough to reasoning that I want to include it in this course. So some examples of this will be the confirmation bias. So this is a bias people have where they tend to try to confirm beliefs they already have and disconfirm beliefs they don't want to have. So for instance, if you like a particular political candidate, you will tend to read stories that are favorable to that candidate. You will tend to not read or disbelieve stories that paint that candidate in a negative light. For example, there's a lot of different ways that manifests, and we'll talk about those, but that's the confirmation bias. Another is implicit gender bias, very similar to implicit racial bias and other kinds of similar biases. And this is apart from like overt racism or overt sexism, right? This is something that's implicit, and it's implicit often even in people who are not really at all racist or sexist. In fact, people who are feminists can exhibit implicit gender bias. They don't even realize that decisions they make, if you study them in a certain way, you can see that they're biased, even though they themselves aren't aware of that, and their own sort of belief system maybe would reject that overtly if you ask them. But there are still these biases that exist. So that's the introduction to this course. These are the topics that I've discussed, and that's it for this video.